Well, let's bring in our good buddy Dan Orlovsky. We love talking to him during the football season. This is his first appearance with us, and he joins us on the show. Dan, it's Michael, Don, and Peter. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be with you guys again. Hopefully you guys had a tremendous summer. So excited to be with you.
Same thing with you. We hope you had a great summer with your family. So let's start off. We'll start off with the negative, all right? Mike Clay had a story out, said that the Giants are the worst team in football. I think we all don't think that. I mean, we don't think they're a playoff team, but we don't see them being the worst team in football. Do you sense that?
I would lean towards agreeing with you guys. I think, number one, there's not a lot of bad teams in the NFL. You know, there's a lot of teams you sit there and go, oh, maybe they could win the division. Maybe they could. The parity is, you know, over the past couple of years as good as it's ever been. I don't think a team that has the defensive line that the Giants have had, and I think is going to be even better this year with the addition of Burns, is a worst team in football. I don't think a team that has, you know, some of the skill players with the Giants are pretty darn good. If Neighbors is who, you know, I kind of watched him be in college. So worst team in football is a stretch for me. I don't think, to your guys' point, that this is a team that's really going to challenge to win the division or get into the playoffs. But I don't believe that this team is a team that you just look at your schedule and laugh at. No.
Right. And Dan, I would think you agree, of the four major sports, coaches have more to do with the wins and losses than any of them. So if you think they're the worst team in football, then you must think that Brian Daboll's not a very good coach. Because I think if you're a good coach and you said there's enough talent there, that I think they could stay out of the basement.
Yeah, and I'm in team Brian Daboll as a good coach. I think he's a fantastic coach. And I think that him taking over play calling is going to be a benefit for Daniel Jones and for that offense. You know, I don't want to minimize Mike Kafka. I think that he's a really smart offensive mind as well. But play calling is just different. And I think Daboll is one of the better guys and has proved to be one of the better guys when he has that role. So I think that Daboll has a little bit of a bounce back year and kind of re-solidifies like his, I guess, you know, his future within the organization.
All right, so I think a lot of what the Giants do this year is going to rest on the shoulders of Daniel Jones. Joe Shane has made no secret of the fact that he's looking at other quarterbacks on the Giants' Hard Knocks, then on Hard Knocks with the Bears yesterday. He went up to the Bears GM and said, must be nice not looking at quarterbacks. So he's really putting it in the face of Daniel Jones. What are you thinking of Jones? What type of season do you think he could have if he's healthy?
I mean, the reality is if Daniel Jones wants to be the quarterback in 25, he's got to have a career year. You know, I've said this, and this was the concern of him coming out. Like, he's the best I think Daniel can be is solid, is fine, is good. He might have moments when he peaks higher, but that's not going to be the long-term kind of player that he is. And so I think he can have a fine year if that offensive line plays up to kind of what they did in 2022. Jalen's going to have to really start to be a vertical threat and a reliable pass catcher and one-on-one. How they use Malik is going to go a long way in that. You know, I think with Malik Neighbors, if Brian Daboll kind of adapts a little bit of the Deebo Samuel, a little bit of the Mike McDaniel, Tyreek Hill fit, I can see Daniel benefiting off that big time and getting some chunk plays. So I don't have this expectation that Daniel Jones is all of a sudden going to throw for 35 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and everyone's going, oh, my gosh. I think he's going to be kind of what he's been, which is at times unbelievably frustrating. At times he might have a 2 or 3 game stretch where he gives you hope. But until he, you know, he did it in 22. He got rid of the really boneheaded, panicky things. I've talked about that with you guys. Until he does that consistently again, my expectation is he's going to kind of be what he has been.
And where would that land him, you think, moving forward? Like, where does the story end for Daniel Jones in your eyes?
Yeah, unless Daniel Jones has a career year, he's not going to be their starting quarterback in 25. You're not going to pay that much money for a quarterback going into his 7th year, which I believe he would be, that hasn't eclipsed 25 touchdowns. You know, he's only eclipsed 15 touchdowns once. And so you're just not going to do that in today's NFL. Certainly not in your division with, you know, Washington thinking they've got a stud in Jaden Daniels and, you know, Dak Prescott future up in the air. Unless he really has this breakout season. And I remember being on with you guys in 2022, and Michael, I think you were the first one to ask, has he done enough to get the franchise tag? I think the question was. And I was like, yeah, probably, but not a contract extension. And I think probably he's going to have to do enough and more than he did in that year to justify, keeping him at the contract that and the number he would have for 25.
It is unusual, though, because the number is not that high now. So I wonder if he has an okay year. $40 million is middle of the road, Dan. So does that change the equation a bit?
It never does for me. I'm always, because everyone, the point is, well, the salary keep going higher and higher and higher, and I'm aware of that. And everyone goes, well, what are you going to do? What would be the person or the alternative if not? And I always say that should never dictate the decision you make at that position. If you're talking about a second or third wide receiver or a tight end or a center, we can have that conversation, but not at that position. It can't be well, what else would we do? Just because you have that person in that role for a not unbelievable starting price doesn't mean you should wallow in mediocrity.
Right.
And if he has a fine year and the Giants have a fine year, well, if you're Joe Schoen, are you rolling the dice on fine in your future? And if you're Brian Daboll, are you sitting there going, fine is going to get it done again? And so I think there's a lot of tentacles attached, and I always feel bad talking about it, but that's just the reality of the nature at that position in the league. So I don't think just because it's $40 million, you'd rather have $55 million in a guy rather than $40 million knowing, okay, if he's fine, if he plays above his skis, we're still just going to be okay.
All right, Aaron Rodgers plays 17 games this year. Where do the Jets finish?
Oh, if Aaron Rodgers plays 17 games this year, the Jets are in the playoffs. I think they absolutely have a chance to win that division. And bona fide, I think there's 5 teams in the conference that can truly, truly have the ability to beat the Kansas City Chiefs if Patrick is on his A game. Well, that's a tall task, and New York would be one of them.
And okay, how many games is Aaron Rodgers going to play this season? And obviously, this is based on nothing but kind of hunch. I recognize that, but what does Dan Orlovsky's gut say about the availability?
I think he plays 15 plus games.
Okay,
I really do. I think. I've known Aaron a long time, and I don't want to misrepresent our relationship that we're best friends, but I've known him since we were, I think, juniors or seniors in high school. He's a different human, and he's just wired in a way that many greats are wired. And I think in sports, all of us have a lot of evidence where we count greats out because of this or injury or whatnot, and they always seem to come back. And I just think he's one of those in that group, and I fully expect him to look way more like the quarterback we saw in 20 and 21 than the guy that we saw with a broken thumb, everybody, because that conveniently gets missed in 2022.
All right, so let's look at that, though, Dan, because I'm curious about it. He's going to be 41 in December. He had the broken thumb 2 years ago. He played 4 plays last year. Is he just going to defy Father Time? I mean, he hasn't played in a full year, had a serious injury, and we expect him to be the MVP Aaron Rodgers?
I don't want to say that he's going to win MVP, but I do think he defies Father Time, and I do think he plays into that top 10 quarterback level, absolutely. MVP, that Green Bay team with Devontae was obviously really unique, and there was a ton of the RPO, yards after the catch element to their offense. Randall was still playing well, so I don't have Aaron winning MVP, and I don't think he's going to be one of those guys that is that 2 or 3 finalist. But I look at this football team, and I just go, even if I just focus on the offense, I don't need to tell people they're great on defense. If they stay healthy, but I'm saying that for everybody, okay? They're capable. I think the offensive line's a top 7, top 8 offensive line. I think Garrett Wilson goes for 110 catches and 1,500-plus yards and 10-plus touchdowns. I think both tight ends are really dynamic players. I think Corley has 70, 80 catches and probably 400 or 500 yards after the catch. Breece Hall is going to have another 40 or 50 catches himself. So I just know how this guy likes to play. I think stylistically, the people that they have match the style that he likes to play at that position. So I just think I think he absolutely defies Father Time.
And do you believe, I mean, this is a big question mark as well. There's not a lot of winning DNA on this team, so it's not like they have institutional memory on how to win big games, including the coach. Do you believe that Saleh is a good coach? Is he a championship caliber coach, Dan?
Robert Saleh hasn't proven to be a championship caliber coach, no. But he's watched people be championship caliber coaches. You know, he's learned from, you know, guys like Kyle Shanahan and Gary Kubiak and watched them. So, you know, there's a lot that you can carry over. Now, you'll never know if the coach is unflappable in those moments that are necessary to go be into that conversation of winning a championship. But I do know this. If we're just being honest, he's been dealt some deck of cards that ain't been great over the past couple of seasons. If we're just in the totality of being able to win games, let's see what kind of coach he is when the decks are a little bit even. Like, let's just see when he's got to go against a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. Like, when he feels my guys are just as good, let's just give him the opportunity to have that, and then we can gauge if he truly is a championship caliber coach or not.
All right, final thing before I let you go. Who do you have in your Super Bowl?
I have Kansas City and Detroit. My AFC championship game, I actually went back and forth between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Jets, or the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. I took the Houston Texans in finality. And then in the NFC, I took Philadelphia and Detroit. And I think the Chiefs go 3-peat.
Oh, God.
Great. Good stuff. Dan, awesome. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to talking to you every Wednesday.
Have a great afternoon, guys.
All right,
Thanks, Dan. Oh, boy, kill me.
You hate dynasties, don't you, Peter? You hate dynasties.
I'm good. I'm so good on the Chiefs at this point. We'll have another year. If this next year that we're getting involved with is the Giants being absolutely awful, and the Jets somehow it doesn't work out, and they're awful, into a Chiefs playoff run where we're talking about the engagement of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, into Patrick Mahomes winning another Super Bowl, maybe it's time for us all to go. I don't want to do it.
I'm just curious. I'd love to hear your take, Peter, but I want to hear 45 on Patrick Mahomes.
You know what? Growing to like him. Makes great choices. Bigger fan of the wife, though. Like the wife, Brittany Mahomes. Like her on social media. Follow her, not too closely. Slid in the DMs once. She's very good. Very, very good. Very talented. Beautiful Brittany, that's what I call her. And perfect Patrick. America's couple.
Don, why don't you tell us about BetMGM?